Hi, Terry Franks here. Welcome back to Prescott Voice. Please don't forget to hit those subscribe, like, and share buttons. I would so much appreciate it. Today, I want to just kind of expound a bit on Mark Twain and his article that he wrote for Harper's Magazine, I believe in 1898, concerning the Jews. I think this is really important, and I believe it's still true today. I think Mark Twain had a certain brilliance about him, a certain intellectual acumen when it came to the Jewish people. He refers in this article to the Jews and Christians. He compares the two. I read the entire article 2 or 3 times now, and I find it fascinating. I did a video recently on Mark Twain and the Jews and some of what he wrote. But what I have discovered is certain facts, although he doesn't give sources for this in his article, but I assume because he was a brilliant writer and his reputation was stellar, that what he did say was the truth. And if you go online now and research these statistics, although this was done, more than 100 years ago, then you kind of get the idea that it is still true today. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read you some of the facts that I believe are true when it comes to the Jews. We hear so much today about the Jews just slaughtering the Palestinians, just wholesale, without any regard for their lives. And that's not true. All of it is Hamas's doing. They own this. It's not Israel. Israel is defending itself. Hamas, these brutal terrorists, marched into Israel on October 7th and did horrific things. And if you haven't read the latest Jerusalem Post article on the rape, the horrific rape, I mean, it's just unbelievable. These animals, they're subhuman. They're not human beings. They can't be. You need to go, if you can stomach it, and read the Jerusalem Post article. I will link to it in the description. But warning, it is brutal, and it makes you sick just to read what these subhuman monsters did to these women and others. Just the bloodshed, the horrific nature of what they did. You don't see Israeli soldiers in Gaza raping women, dead women, and raping them over and over and over again. That's just not what the Jews do. And if you study the Jews over time, from the beginning of time to now, and of course there's always good and bad in every generation. But as far as the Jews go, what Mark Twain wrote, I think, is very telling. If there's anyone out there that can disprove what I'm about to read, then I'd love to hear it. Leave me a comment, and we'll discuss it some more. But here's what Mark Twain said, and I just made bullet points here, rather than, read the entire article, but you're welcome to do it. It's all over the internet. I think everyone should read it in detail. He was responding in this article to a Jewish lawyer that wrote him a letter. Here are the points, some bullet points that he made, some facts. And I have a feeling that he researched this or had firsthand knowledge of it. And I have to agree with it. So anyway, this is from 1898, Harper's Magazine. And he's writing and responding to this lawyer that wrote him a letter asking him questions. The Jew is not a disturber of the peace of any country. Even his enemies will concede that. He is not a loafer. He is not a sot, which is a habitual drinker. He is not noisy. He is not a rioter. He is not quarrelsome, crime statistics prove his presence is conspicuously rare in all countries. He has little to do with murder and other crimes of violence. He is a stranger to the hangman. His name seldom appears on police rolls of assaults and drunk and disorderlies. The Jewish home is a home in the truest sense, which no one will dispute. And if any of you know Jewish families, you know what Mark Twain is talking about here. The strongest affection knits together the Jewish family, and they show each other every due respect, and reverence for the elders is an inviolate law of their house. The Jew is not a burden on the charities of the state nor of cities. In other words, the Jew is self-sufficient. They don't rely on charity. When he is well enough, he works. When he is incapacitated, his own people take care of him. And not in a poor, stingy way, but with fine and large benevolence. His race is entitled to be called the most benevolent of all races of men. That's a pretty bold statement, don't you think, by Mark Twain? He was very serious in this article. I think it's fascinating. A Jewish beggar is not impossible. So, Mark Twain is saying, hey, there may be a Jewish beggar somewhere. But he says, perhaps such a thing exists, but there are few men that can say they have seen that spectacle. They don't beg. The Jew has been staged in many uncomplimentary forms, but so far as I know, Mark Twain says, no dramatist has done him the injustice to stage him as a beggar. Whenever a Jew has real need to beg, his people save him from the necessity of doing it. The charitable institutions of the Jews are supported by Jewish money and amply. The Jews make no noise about it. It is done quietly. They do not nag and pester and harass us for contributions, meaning the Gentile. Anyone that is not a Jew is a Gentile, and that includes the Muslims. They give us peace and set for us an example which we have not found ourselves able to follow. And I'm talking about Gentiles. And I agree with that 100%. For by nature, we, Gentiles, are not free givers. And I'm sure there'll be many people who disagree with that. And have to be patiently and persistently hunted down in the interest of the unfortunate. That's the Gentile. We have to be hunted down and pestered about contributing. But the Jew, not so much. For by nature, we are not free givers. Summed up, Mark Twain says, all of the above certify that the Jew is quiet, peaceable, industrious, unaddicted to high crimes and brutal dispositions, that his family life is commendable, and that he is not a burden upon the public charities, that he is not a beggar, that in benevolence he is above the reach of competition. These are the very quintessentials of good citizenship. You can add that the Jew is as honest as the average of his neighbors, but I think that question is affirmatively answered by the fact that he is a successful businessman. The basis of a successful business is honesty. A business cannot thrive where the parties to it cannot trust each other. I suppose that the best example in history, this is what Mark Twain is writing, I suppose that the best example in history of a trader's trust in his fellow trader was one where it was not a Christian or a Gentile trusting a Gentile or another Christian, but a Christian trusting a Jew. And here's the example he used, which it blew me away when I read it. That Hessian Duke, who used to sell his subjects to George III to fight George Washington, got rich at it. And by, when the war's endangered by the French Revolution, made his throne too warm for him, he was obliged to flee the country. He was in a hurry and had to leave his earnings behind to the tune of $9 million. Now, back in that day, in the 1700s, $9 million was a lot of money. He had to risk the money with someone without security. So he had to leave this $9 million with someone with no security. He had to trust someone to hold that money for him as he fled the country. He did not select a Gentile or a Christian in this case. This is what Mark Twain wrote, a Christian, but a Jew of only modest means, but of high character, a character so high that it left him lonesome. And who is that? Rothschild of Frankfurt. And if you don't know what that name means or who it is, it's a Jewish family, very wealthy Jewish family. 30 years later, when Europe had become quiet and safe again, the Duke came back from overseas. And the Jew returned the loan with interest added. So, he continues here in all countries from the dawn of history. In all countries from the dawn of history, the Jew has been persistently and implacably hated and with frequency persecuted. I think in light of all the anti-Semitism right now, and the hatred for the Jews, if you are a Christian and you are standing on the side of Hamas, supporting what Hamas did, then you have a real problem. Because not only what I read to you is true, but we have the Jews to thank for our salvation in Jesus Christ, which is the most valuable thing on the planet Earth. My salvation to me means everything, because I am just living in this world for a short time. I'm just here for a little while, just passing through, because my citizenship isn't here in this world, on this earth. My citizenship is in heaven with Jesus Christ, who is a Jew and always will be a Jew. So that's what I have to say today. This is Mark Twain's article concerning the Jews. That's the title of it. It was published in 1898 in Harper's magazine. You can read it for yourself. I thought this was just very poignant, given the climate we are living in now, with so much hatred for the Jewish people, crying for the destruction of Israel. We have to stop it. No one likes to see the death of babies and women and children. But we have to stop. We have to stop the hatred against the Jews. Israel is only doing what it has to do to destroy Hamas. I have no words for what they did to the Jewish women that are described in that Jerusalem Post article. I was reading that when they brought the bodies in of these women, their hands were clenched and their faces were contorted in horror and fear. And that's the way they died. They were frozen like that. I don't understand it. It actually makes you sick to your stomach. So I will stand for Israel. And I do believe that what Mark Twain wrote in 1898, he did it for a time such as this. So we could look back, see the Jews for what they truly are. They are a people that want to preserve life, and especially their existence. So that is it for now. I'd love to hear comments from you. I don't care what they are. I don't care if you're a Muslim or a Hamas supporter. I don't care who you are. I'd love to hear your comments. And I'll try to respond to them as long as they aren't vile. If you want to have a real conversation about it and comment, have a real discussion about it, I'm happy to do that. Thank you for watching.